I sat in the second row of a federal courtroom with my hands folded in my lap and my face still enough to look empty. That was what my mother wanted people to believe. Vivian Whitaker had spent most of my life teaching strangers that I was cold, lazy, ungrateful, and impossible to love. So when she tried to destroy me in public, she expected to see the villain she had invented. She never understood that silence is not always surrender. Sometimes silence is discipline, the door before truth. My mother was on the witness stand wearing a black designer dress, pearls, and mirror-practiced grief. She held a tissue in one hand and pressed it under her eye, even though no tears ever fell. Her voice trembled at all the right moments. Her shoulders curved forward just enough to make her look fragile. Every few sentences, she glanced at Judge Helena Ward like she was begging a decent woman to protect her from the terrible daughter sitting a few feet away. A stranger might have believed her. Maya has always been troubled, my mother said softly. We tried to help her, her father especially. Elliot gave her chance after chance, money after money, but she never wanted to work. She wanted the benefits of our family without any responsibility. There it was. The old story. Maya did not work. Maya could not keep a job. Maya was jealous of Cole. Maya was unstable. Maya took and took until the family finally had nothing left to give. It did not matter that none of it was true. In Vivian's world, repetition mattered more than evidence. Judge Ward watched her without expression. Mrs. Whitaker, please answer the question directly. Are you stating under oath that your daughter stole from the Whitaker family trust? Vivian lowered her chin. Yes, Your Honor, $4 million. She took it while her father was dying. A murmur moved through the courtroom, sharp enough to cut. $4 million sounds different. Someone says it in a federal courtroom. It sounds heavier, dirtier, final. I kept my eyes on the witness stand and refused to blink too fast. My mother continued, growing braver with every lie. She claimed I had hacked into family accounts, manipulated my father while he was medicated, moved money through hidden offshore entities, and then tried to blame my brother when the theft was discovered. She even said I had always resented Cole because he was the responsible child, the one Elliot trusted. Cole sat behind her in the gallery, playing his part beautifully. His head was bowed. His jaw was tight. Every once in a while, he rubbed his thumb over his wedding band, pretending to be a devastated son and brother instead of the man who had been laundering money through his own wife's brokerage. His navy suit fit him too well. His watch caught the courtroom light every time he shifted. I knew which company account had paid for it. I knew the routing trail, the false vendor invoice, and the gambling debt that had made him desperate enough to steal from our dying father. But I said nothing. I knew my mother was going to lie. I had spent months preparing for it. I had read summaries, listened to recordings, traced transfers, reviewed forged signatures, and watched the people who raised me become evidence files. But nothing prepares you for hearing the woman who gave birth to you call you a parasite in front of a federal judge. Nothing prepares you for the tiny, stupid piece of your heart that still waits for her to remember you are her child. I hated that part of myself most. The part that still wanted Vivian to stop, look embarrassed, and say she had gone too far. She never did. Instead, she leaned toward the microphone and whispered, "My daughter stole from a dying man, from her own father. I do not know how someone does that unless something inside them is broken." For 1 second, my fingers tightened together in my lap. That was the only reaction I allowed myself, one private fracture. Then I breathed in, let it out slowly, and looked at Daniel Mercer, my attorney. Daniel did not turn his head. He knew what was inside the sealed envelope resting on the table in front of him. Judge Ward shifted her attention to our side of the courtroom. "Mr. Mercer, Does your client have anything to say in response to these allegations? Daniel rose with the measured calm of a man who had never wasted a word in his life. He picked up the sealed federal envelope and held it lightly between two fingers. "My client will not be testifying at this moment, Your Honor," he said. "However, we are prepared to submit a sealed document that will clarify two matters central to this proceeding." Vivian made a small sound, almost a laugh. Her grieving widow mask slipped just enough for me to see the irritation underneath. In her mind, Daniel was stalling. In her mind, I had hired some quiet little attorney to beg for mercy because I was finally cornered. Judge Ward looked at the envelope. "What two matters?" Daniel's voice remained even. "First, where the $4 million actually went. Second, what Ms. Maya Whitaker actually does for a living." The courtroom changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. A few heads turned. Cole lifted his eyes. Vivian's mouth tightened, and then she smiled the way she always smiled when someone challenged one of her favorite lies. "Your Honor," she said, "with respect, Maya has never had a real job. She tells stories. She disappears for weeks. She lives off other people and then pretends privacy is the same thing as employment." Cole let out a quiet breath that was almost a chuckle. He thought that line helped them. He thought I would be humiliated. Maybe the old me would have been the girl who used to sit at Thanksgiving dinners while Vivian praised Cole and asked me whether I had considered doing something useful with my life. The woman sitting there now had survived too much to shrink. Daniel did not respond to Vivian. He simply handed the envelope to the bailiff. The bailiff crossed the courtroom and delivered it to Judge Ward. I watched the judge examine the seal before opening it. My heart was steady, but my body remembered fear anyway. That is the strange thing about family wounds. Even when you know you are safe, your nerves still remember being trapped at the dinner table, mocked in the hallway, told your truth was arrogance. Judge Ward removed the document and began to read. At first, her expression was formal. Then her eyes sharpened. She turned the page. The room seemed to hold its breath with her. Vivian looked from the judge to Daniel, then to me, searching for some crack in my face. Cole sat straighter. The smirk disappeared first. Then the color began to drain from his cheeks. I did not smile. I wanted to. Not because this was funny, and not because any part of me enjoyed seeing my family unravel in public. I wanted to smile because, for the first time in my life, Vivian Whitaker was not controlling the room. Her voice was not the loudest evidence. A piece of paper from the federal government had done what I could never do as a child. It had made people stop and question her. Judge Ward finished the first page, then looked up slowly. Her gaze moved to Vivian, then to Cole, then finally to me. Something in her expression had changed completely. She was no longer looking at me like a defendant in a family estate dispute. She was looking at me like a witness she had not been properly introduced to. Vivian forced a brittle laugh. "Your Honor, I do not know what my daughter has fabricated, but Maya has always been very good at manipulating paperwork." Judge Ward's eyes hardened. "Mrs. Whitaker, I would strongly advise you not to speak again unless you are directly answering a question." That was when Vivian understood something had gone wrong. Not everything, not yet, but enough. Her fingers crushed the tissue in her palm. Cole's knee started bouncing under the table behind her. Daniel sat down beside me without a word. I kept my face calm, but inside, I was standing at the edge of 3 months of buried grief, secret evidence, and the last promise I ever made my father. That envelope did not just contain proof that my mother had lied. It contained the beginning of the end for the Whitaker family as Vivian and Cole knew it. But to understand why that envelope destroyed them, you have to go back to the day my father was buried. the day my mother and brother made their first mistake. 3 months earlier, my father's funeral reception was held at Hawthorne Ridge Country Club because, of course, it was. Vivian Whitaker would rather grieve in a room with crystal chandeliers than in a place that felt honest. The air smelled like lilies, champagne, polished wood, and expensive perfume sprayed over something rotten. Everywhere I looked, people were performing sadness with the same practiced softness my mother had used in court. Men from Whitaker Commercial Holdings stood near the bar with low voices and folded hands. Waiters moved through the room with silver trays as if my father's death were a fundraiser with better flowers. I stood near the back with a paper cup of black coffee going cold between my hands. No one asked if I was okay. A few people looked at me, then looked away quickly, as if acknowledging me might offend Vivian. That was how it had always worked in our family. My mother did not have to banish me from rooms. She only had to teach people that I was inconvenient, unstable, less worthy of gentleness than everyone else. By the time I understood it, everyone else already had. Cole was near the center of the reception, laughing quietly with two business associates as if he had already inherited the company and was simply waiting for the paperwork to catch up. He wore a dark suit, fresh haircut, and the expression of a man who had mistaken a funeral for a coronation. Every few minutes, someone clapped his shoulder and told him Elliot would have been proud. Cole accepted the condolences like tribute. My father would not have been proud. Elliot Whitaker had built his company with discipline, patience, and an almost religious respect for accurate numbers. When I was 12, he taught me how to read ledgers at the kitchen table, while Vivian told him not to fill my head with boring things. He ignored her, slid a yellow legal pad toward me, and showed me how one false entry could poison an entire statement. Numbers don't lie, sweetheart, he told me. People do. That sentence shaped my life. It followed me through college, graduate school, my first fraud case, and every spreadsheet where greed tried to hide under clean formatting. Vivian called my quietness laziness. Elliot called it focus. Vivian said I was difficult. Elliot said I asked better questions than most adults. He was not perfect, and he did not always protect me from my mother the way I needed. But he saw me. In that family, being seen was almost shelter. I was remembering his hand tapping the ledger page when Cole appeared in front of me with Vivian at his side. His smile was polite enough for the room, cruel enough for me. Vivian's pearls sat perfectly against her black dress, and her eyes were dry. "We need to talk," Cole said. I looked at the folded paper in his hand. "At Dad's funeral?" "Reception," Vivian corrected. "And yes, your brother is trying to prevent unnecessary ugliness." Cole held out the paper. "Dad updated his will. I did not take it right away." Something in me went very still. My father's real estate attorneys had spent years organizing his estate plan. Elliot was meticulous. He labeled folders, he kept duplicate records, he scheduled reviews every December. The idea that he had suddenly changed everything with a folded sheet of paper handed to Cole like a school permission slip was insulting before I even saw it. Vivian's mouth tightened. "Take it, Maya. Do not make a scene." So I took it. The paper was cheap. The signature was wrong. Not dramatically wrong, but wrong in the pressure, the angle, the hesitation before the final R. The date was worse. According to the document, my father had signed over control of nearly everything to Cole on a day when he was sedated, intubated, and unable to hold a pen. There were no witnesses, no notary, no attorney letterhead, no reference to the trust amendments he had executed years earlier. For 1 second, I wanted to scream. I wanted to hold that paper in the air and tell everyone in that room that my brother had forged our dead father's name before the flowers on his casket had even wilted. But my father had taught me better than that. Never interrupt a liar when he is handing you evidence. I folded the paper and looked at Cole. Interesting. His smile flickered. That is all you have to say? For now. Vivian stepped closer, lowering her voice, but not enough. She wanted nearby guests to hear pieces, never the whole truth. That was her favorite method. She did not stab you in private when she could arrange for witnesses to misunderstand the blood. Your father was tired of carrying you, she said. Cole has responsibilities now. The company, the estate, the house. You need to accept reality with dignity for once. The house? I asked. She lifted her chin. Yes, we will need your keys. A few people nearby went quiet. I felt their attention turn toward us, hungry and embarrassed at the same time. Vivian knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted me humiliated publicly, reduced from daughter to unwanted tenant in front of the same people who had spent 2 hours praising my father's generosity. My keys to Dad's house, I said carefully. To the family house, Vivian corrected. Given the financial mess you have created, we may have to sell it. Your debts are not going to swallow what is left of this family. I almost laughed because the lie was so bold it circled back to absurd. I had no credit card debt, no personal loans, no gambling markers hidden behind shell companies. Cole did. Cole had been bleeding money for months, borrowing against assets he did not control, using family property as collateral for a commercial loan that should never have been approved. The bank was already circling. The house Vivian was demanding keys to was not a trophy she had won from me. It was a structure already cracking under Cole's fraud. Cole placed a hand over his heart, like the responsible older son, forced into painful leadership. Maya, nobody wants this, but you have been living beyond your means for years. Dad covered for you because he loved you. Now we have to be adults. The nearest guests pretended not to listen while listening to every word. Heat climbed up my neck, not because I believed him, but because humiliation does not need truth to hurt. My body remembered being 16, standing in a hallway while Vivian told an aunt I was jealous of Cole because he had ambition. It remembered being 24, home for Christmas, while she asked in front of everyone whether my mysterious government job was unemployment with better vocabulary. Shame can become muscle memory if someone trains you long enough. I reached into my purse and removed the house key from my ring, then the alarm fob, then the garage remote. Vivian's eyes brightened just a little. She thought obedience meant defeat. She had never learned the difference between giving up and giving someone enough rope. I placed everything into her open palm. Here. Cole's smile returned. Vivian closed her fingers around the keys like she had taken possession of me along with the house. Thank you for being reasonable, she said. I looked at Cole. You should call the bank first thing Monday. His face changed. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Enough for me. The bank? He asked. Yes. Audits tend to move faster after a death, especially when commercial loans are cross-collateralized with residential property. The room around us continued humming with polite grief, but Cole heard the warning under the sentence. I saw it pass through him. Fear, then calculation, then arrogance covering both. You do not know what you are talking about, he said. I handed him the folded will. Maybe not. Vivian slipped the fake will into her clutch quickly, as if I might contaminate it by looking too long. You should go home, Maya. I looked at her hand holding my father's keys. Apparently, I do not have one. For the first time that afternoon, satisfaction crossed her face without disguise. Then perhaps this is a good time to learn independence. That should have been the final cut. Maybe she expected tears. Maybe she expected me to beg, to demand my place in the family, to defend myself loud enough that everyone could call me unstable. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But grief had made everything inside me dangerously clear. Elliot was gone. Vivian had chosen her side. Cole had forged the first document, and every person in that room who looked away had shown me exactly how little their sympathy was worth. I turned and walked toward the exit. Nobody stopped me. A waiter stepped aside with a tray of champagne. Someone whispered my name. I kept moving past the framed golf photographs, past the polished staircase, past the country club receptionist who looked at me with professional pity. Outside, the late afternoon air felt cold against my face, and for a moment, I could finally breathe without perfume and lilies pressing into my lungs. My car was parked at the far edge of the lot beneath a bare oak tree. I got in, shut the door, and sat there without starting the engine. My hands began shaking the second no one could see them. I hated that too. I hated that Vivian could still do that to me. I hated that Cole could stand over our father's memory and turn it into a transaction. Most of all, I hated that my first instinct was still to call Dad and tell him what they had done. That was when grief hit hardest. Not in the chapel, not when they lowered the casket, not while Vivian accepted condolences like applause. It hit in the quiet of my locked car, with his voice alive only in memory. Numbers don't lie, sweetheart. People do. I pressed my palms against the steering wheel until the shaking slowed. Then I opened the folder on the passenger seat, the one no one at Hawthorne Ridge knew I had brought. Inside were copies of transaction records, loan documents, preliminary forensic notes, and the last signed authorization my father had given before his final decline. Vivian and Cole thought today was the day they removed me from the family. They had no idea my father had already removed their ability to control the truth. Before he died, Elliot had known enough to be afraid, not of death, of what Cole would do afterward, of what Vivian would excuse, of what greed would become once there was no one left in the room with power to say no. So he had come to me quietly, not as his overlooked daughter, but as the one person in the family who knew how to follow money through a maze and come out with proof. I looked back at the country club entrance. Through the glass doors, I could still see people moving beneath warm lights, sipping drinks, protecting reputations, pretending death made everyone noble. Cole probably believed he had won because he had made me walk out alone. Vivian probably believed she had punished me by taking keys to a house already poisoned by fraud. They were both wrong. I started the car and drove away from Hawthorne Ridge without looking back. My hands were steady by the time I reached the main road. My father was buried. My mother had declared war. And my brother had given me a forged will in a room full of witnesses. They thought they had made me homeless. What they did not know was that by sunrise, they were going to make themselves federal targets. The next morning, I walked into First Commonwealth Bank wearing the same black dress I had worn to my father's funeral, because I had not gone home, not really. I had driven to a small hotel near the interstate, checked in under an agency-approved alias, and spent half the night reviewing the fake will he had handed me beneath the chandeliers at Hawthorne Ridge. By sunrise, grief had hardened into something quieter. Not rage. Rage makes people reckless. This was colder than rage. This was purpose. I needed Vivian and Cole to make the next move, and I knew exactly what it would be. People like them always confuse cruelty with strategy. They never understand that when they overreach, they leave fingerprints. First Commonwealth Bank had handled Whitaker family accounts for decades. My father knew every senior officer by name. When I was a teenager, they used to offer me bottled water and call me Miss Whitaker. That morning, the receptionist looked at my dress. my pale face, and the funeral program still tucked inside my purse, then avoided my eyes. That was when I knew Vivian had already called ahead. Preston Vale, the branch manager, made me wait 27 minutes even though his glass office was empty. I watched him pretend to review papers while glancing at me through the blinds. Preston was the kind of man who believed a suit made him important, and eye contact was something he granted to people with balances high enough to respect. When he finally opened his door, he did not invite me to sit. He stood behind his desk with his hands folded over his stomach and gave me a smile polished smooth by cowardice. "Ms. Whitaker," he said, "I am sorry for your loss." "No, you are not," I said. "But thank you." His smile twitched. "How can I assist you?" "I need to access my personal checking and savings accounts." Preston's expression became carefully regretful. "Unfortunately, that will not be possible today." I looked at him. "Why?" "There is an emergency injunction in place." He slid a thin packet across the desk, but kept 2 fingers on top of it for half a second too long, as if even the paper might be dangerous in my hands. The order claimed I had misappropriated trust assets, posed a flight risk, and might dissipate funds connected to an ongoing estate dispute. It listed Vivian as petitioner and Cole as supporting party. It was fast, sloppy, and aggressive. Exactly what I expected. "It applies to my personal accounts?" I asked. "Until further clarification, yes. Based on an allegation. Based on a court order. Based on a lie dressed up as a court order." Preston's face cooled. "Miss Whitaker, I would advise you to be very careful. These are serious accusations." It was not the money that hurt. I had other resources. It was the way he looked at me, like my mother's lie had already become my face. Like the black dress meant guilt instead of mourning. Like the daughter of a respected client had transformed overnight into a criminal because Vivian had said so in the right tone to the right people. That was always her gift. She could ruin your reputation before you even knew a conversation had happened. I signed for copies of the freeze notice and asked Preston to document his refusal in writing. He hated that. Men like Preston enjoy power most when no one asks them to put it on paper. He printed a confirmation letter slowly, with the stiff movements of someone beginning to realize this interaction might matter later. When he handed it over, I folded it neatly and placed it in my purse. "You understand," he said, "that attempting to move funds in violation of the injunction could expose you to further legal consequences." "I understand consequences better than you think." That was when Cole walked in. He wore sunglasses indoors and carried coffee from a place that charged $9 for foam. He looked freshly showered, rested, almost bright. For 1 second, I saw the boy he used to be when we were children, racing me across the lawn while Dad pretended not to let him win. Then the image vanished, and there he was again, my brother in a stolen watch, smiling at my humiliation. "Maya," he said. "Rough morning?" Preston straightened as if royalty had entered the office. "Mr. Whitaker!" Cole ignored him and leaned against the doorframe. "Mom said you might come here. Predictable." I glanced at Preston. Did the bank notify him of my attempt to access my personal funds? Preston's mouth opened, then closed. Cole laughed. "Relax, we are family." "No," I said. "We are evidence." He did not understand the line. Not yet. He stepped into the office, pulled out his wallet, and removed a crisp $100 bill. Then he tossed it onto Preston's desk between us. "Here," he said. "Buy yourself a bus ticket, go somewhere cheaper, start over. Maybe this time try working for a living." The humiliation was supposed to break me. I could feel Preston watching, hungry for my reaction. I could feel Cole waiting for the old script, the one where I either cried or snapped so he could prove I was unstable. Instead, I looked at the bill, then at my brother. You should keep it, I said. You are going to need commissary money. Cole's smile thinned. You always were dramatic. And you always were careless. For a moment, the room went quiet. Something passed through his face again. The same flicker I had seen at Hawthorne Ridge when I mentioned bank audits. He covered it quickly, but not before I caught it. Cole was not afraid of me because I was his sister. He was afraid of me because some part of him remembered I had inherited my father's patience with numbers. I left the $100 on the desk and walked out. In the parking lot, I did not look back until I was inside my car with the doors locked. Only then did I let myself exhale. The entire morning had been ugly, but useful. Vivian had obtained an injunction by making false statements. Preston had enforced the freeze against personal accounts without proper separation from disputed estate funds. Cole had appeared almost immediately, which suggested coordination. And he had done what arrogant criminals always do. He had threatened me in front of a witness because he believed family cruelty did not count as evidence. I opened the glove compartment and removed a phone no one in my family knew existed. It was heavier than a normal phone, encrypted, agency issued, and ugly in the way government equipment usually is. I powered it on, waited for the secure signal, and called the one person Vivian and Cole should have feared more than any judge. Special Agent Elias Reed answered on the second ring. Whitaker. They took the bait. Howe was silent for a moment. In the background, I heard office noise. A printer. Someone laughing too loudly. The ordinary sounds of a federal building where disasters were processed under fluorescent lights. Details, Reed said. I told him everything. The fake will at the funeral, the public demand for house keys, the emergency injunction, Preston Vale's refusal, Cole's appearance, and the $100 insult. Reed did not interrupt. He listened like every word had weight. When I finished, he said, "Do you have the documents?" "Yes. Copies of the injunction and the bank refusal letter. The forged will is scanned and secured." "Good. Do not challenge the freeze yet. Let it stand." "I know. The more they rely on the false accusation, the cleaner the fraud pattern becomes." I leaned back against the seat and closed my eyes. There it was. The part of the truth no one in my family knew. I was not unemployed. I was not drifting. I was a senior forensic accountant with IRS criminal investigation. And for the past 6 months, I had been helping build a case that began with my father's fear and was now becoming something much larger than an inheritance dispute. Elliot had come to me before the final hospital decline, when the cancer had thinned his face but not his mind. He asked me to meet him after hours in his private office. No Vivian, no Cole, no company counsel. When I arrived, he was sitting behind his desk with bank statements spread across the surface and shame in his eyes. "I should have seen it sooner," he said. I sat across from him and looked at the papers. Seen what? Cole. The first discrepancies were small enough to dismiss if you wanted to stay blind. Inflated vendor invoices, consulting payments to entities with no business history, emergency loans secured by assets that should have required board approval. Then there were transfers routed through a corporate account linked to property sales Naomi had handled through Brooks Lux Realty. My father had not understood all of it yet, but he understood enough to know his son was stealing and someone was helping him hide it. That night, Elliot did not ask me to protect the money. He asked me to protect the truth. The next week, with federal oversight and proper authorization, $4 million in vulnerable trust assets were moved into a protected Sting account under U.S. Treasury control. On paper, the movement looked tempting enough for Cole to chase. In reality, Every attempted claim, transfer, and recovery effort would help document intent. My father signed the authorization with a shaking hand. Then he looked at me like I was both his daughter and his last witness. "Not the money, Maya," he said. "The truth. Protect the truth." I promised him I would. Now, sitting outside the bank where my mother had tried to make me look desperate, I felt the weight of that promise settle into my bones again. I wanted to tell Reed I was tired. I wanted to tell him that watching my family turn grief into fraud was harder than any case I had ever worked. But federal investigations do not pause because the suspect is your brother, and evidence does not become less real because your mother collected it against you. Reed's voice brought me back. "Has Cole attempted to move company funds again?" "Not directly through the accounts we are watching," I said. "But he is pressuring Naomi." "His wife?" "Yes, Naomi Brooks Whitaker. She owns Brooks Lux Realty. She is self-made, careful, and not stupid. Cole has been using her brokerage to make transfers look like real estate activity. If he has his way, her name will sit at the top of the paper trail." "Do you believe she is involved?" "No." "You sound certain." "I am certain enough to warn her." Reed paused. "Maya, be careful. If she tips him off—" "She will not." "You do not know that." "No," I said, opening my eyes. "But I know what it looks like when a woman is being positioned to take the fall." Through the windshield, I watched Cole exit the bank, laughing at something Preston said. My brother looked relaxed again, confident that he had stranded me without money, housing, or credibility. He had no idea. The account freeze had just strengthened the federal case. He had no idea. The $4 million he accused me of stealing had been protected before he ever reached for it. And he had no idea that the wife he treated like a useful signature was about to become the first person outside the investigation to see the truth. I started the car and pulled out of the bank parking lot, leaving Cole, Preston, and the $100 bill behind me. Cole thought Naomi was his perfect cover. He had no idea she was about to become the reason his entire scheme collapsed. By late morning, downtown looked too bright for the kind of truth I was carrying. I drove past restaurants preparing lunch menus, lawyers crossing intersections with briefcases, assistants balancing coffee trays, and for a few minutes, I hated all of them for living inside ordinary problems. My father was dead. My mother had turned mourning into a legal attack. My brother had frozen my accounts and smiled while doing it. And now I was on my way to warn the woman he had married that he was building a prison cell around her name. Brooks Lux Realty occupied the top 2 floors of a renovated stone building near the financial district. The sign was understated, black lettering against frosted glass, the kind of branding that did not need to shout because the clients already knew the price range. Naomi had built it herself. Vivian used to say that with a strange little smile, as if Naomi's success were impressive but somehow suspicious. My mother loved wealth when it arrived through inheritance, marriage, or the right country club introduction. She hated it when a woman earned it without asking permission. I parked across the street and watched the office through the glass. Inside, everything was polished and deliberate. White orchids on the reception desk, framed architectural photography, assistants moving with quiet efficiency. Naomi Brooks Whitaker stood inside a corner office with one hand on her desk and the other holding a stack of property documents. Even through the glass, I could see exhaustion in the set of her shoulders. She was dressed in cream trousers and a fitted navy blazer, hair pulled back, expression controlled. Cole was in front of her, pacing like a man who had mistaken volume for authority. I could not hear them from the street, but I could read the shape of the fight. Cole jabbed at the papers. Naomi shook her head. He leaned closer. She stepped back, not afraid exactly, but done. There is a difference. Fear makes you smaller. Being done makes you still. I crossed the street and entered the building. The receptionist recognized my last name before she recognized my face. I saw it happen. That quick calculation people make around family names connected to money and scandal. She asked if I had an appointment. I said no, but I would wait. She looked relieved when I sat down instead of making a scene. Cole's voice carried before he did. You are making this difficult for no reason, he snapped. Naomi's voice followed, lower and sharper. No, Cole, I am refusing to destroy asset value because you suddenly need liquidity by Friday. They came into clearer view through the conference glass. Cole slapped a document onto Naomi's desk. These warehouses are dead weight, he said. List them below market, move them fast, and stop acting like I asked you to commit murder. You asked me to rush 3 commercial listings tied to your father's company without board authorization, without proper valuation, and with wire instructions to an entity I have never used. It is a holding company. It is a Cayman Islands shell. My spine tightened. Naomi had already seen it. Cole's face darkened. Do not use words you do not understand. Naomi stared at him. Try that again. For 1 second, I almost smiled. Not because any part of this was funny, but because Cole had just made the mistake Vivian always made. He assumed dignity was weakness. He assumed Naomi's restraint meant she could be handled. He pulled a wire slip from the folder and shoved it toward her. Mariner Crest Holdings receives the proceeds. Temporary placement. That is all. I saw enough before he moved his hand. Routing digits, beneficiary name, the same offshore entity that had appeared in preliminary transfer attempts connected to Whitaker Commercial Holdings. A shell company with clean paperwork, dirty purpose, and Naomi's forged signature buried somewhere beneath it. Naomi picked up the slip and read it slowly. Why is my brokerage license number attached to this? Cole froze for half a second too long. It is standard, he said. No, it is not. You are being paranoid because Maya has been filling your head with nonsense. I had not spoken to Naomi in months. He was already preparing the explanation before the accusation even existed. Naomi's expression changed, not dramatically, but enough. She looked from the wire slip to his face and understood that he had told on himself. Get out of my office, she said. Cole laughed, ugly and nervous. You are my wife. This is my company. You would not have half these clients without my family name. Naomi stepped around the desk and opened the door. Out! He looked like he wanted to grab the folder from her hand. Then he noticed the receptionist watching, 2 junior brokers frozen near the hallway, and me sitting in the waiting area. His eyes landed on me. For a moment, neither of us moved. What are you doing here? He asked. I looked at Naomi. I need to speak with your wife. Cole's mouth twisted. Whatever she told you, she is lying. Naomi's eyes did not leave him. She has not told me anything yet. That made him angrier than an accusation would have. He snatched his coat from the back of a chair and walked toward the elevator, shoulders tight, phone already in his hand. I knew he was going to call Vivian before the doors closed. Men like Cole always run to the person who taught them the world should rearrange itself around their panic. When the elevator shut, Naomi looked at me with the kind of cool distance I probably deserved. For years, we had existed around each other but never together. Family dinners, charity events, company parties. She was always perfect, guarded, expensive, untouchable. I had believed she looked down on me because Vivian told me she did. Later, I learned Naomi had believed I resented her because Vivian told her that. That was how my mother survived. She kept the women around her isolated, suspicious, and too proud to compare notes. Naomi nodded toward her office. 5 minutes. Inside, her office smelled like coffee, leather, and fresh paper. The skyline spread behind her in a view Cole had probably mistaken for his own achievement. She closed the door but did not sit. "I am not giving you money," she said. "I am not asking for any." "Then what do you want?" I placed a folder on her desk. "I want you to know what your husband is doing before he makes you look like the architect of it." Her face did not soften, but her eyes sharpened. "Explain." So I did. Not everything, not my federal role, not the protected account, not details that could compromise the investigation. But enough. I told her Cole was moving money out of Whitaker Commercial Holdings through transactions disguised as real estate activity. I told her Mariner Crest Holdings was not harmless. I told her her brokerage, license number, and electronic credentials were being tied to wire requests that would eventually look intentional to anyone following the paper. I told her that if investigators traced the path without context, she would not look like Cole's wife. She would look like the professional who made the scheme possible. Naomi listened without interrupting. That scared me more than denial would have. Denial wastes time. Naomi was already sorting facts. "Why are you telling me?" she asked. "Because I do not think you are involved. You do not know me." "No, but I know Cole." Her mouth tightened. I slid the folder closer. "And I know what it looks like when someone is preparing to sacrifice a woman with better records than his own." She looked down at the folder but did not touch it. "What is in there?" "Enough to make you start checking your systems. Not enough to make you safe." "Safe from whom?" "Cole, Vivian, anyone who benefits from making you the signature on their crime." For the first time, something like anger broke through her composure. It was not loud. It was not messy. It burned clean. "You think Vivian is involved?" "I think Vivian sees only what protects Cole. Sometimes that is worse." Naomi finally opened the folder. She read the top page, then the next. Her hand stilled over a copy of a transfer summary. I watched the exact moment she recognized a transaction she had never approved. "I did not sign this," she said. "I did not think you did." She looked up. "If this is a setup—" "It is," I said. "Just not mine." I left her with the documents and a blank card bearing a secure number. I did not ask her to trust me. Trust had been poisoned in our family. All I could do was leave her with the truth and hope she was smart enough to follow it. Naomi was smarter than all of us. After I left, she locked her office door, canceled her afternoon meetings, and began digging. She told me later that she started with the International Corporate Registry because she wanted to prove I was exaggerating. Instead, she found Mariner Crest Holdings within 9 minutes. The listed primary stakeholder was Naomi Brooks Whitaker. The mailing address traced back to a service provider in Georgetown. The incorporation documents carried her name, her license number, and a signature that looked like hers if you had only seen it on a holiday card and never watched her sign a contract. Then she checked her brokerage system. That was where the betrayal became personal. Someone had used administrative credentials to generate draft closing packets for properties that had not been properly approved for sale. Wire templates had been created with Mariner Crest as beneficiary. Internal notes suggested Naomi had verbally authorized expedited processing. Timestamps placed some activity after midnight from an IP address connected to Cole's private device. Her staff had not made clerical errors. Her husband had been building a trail where every road led back to her desk. By evening, Naomi went home to the penthouse she had bought before she married Cole. He was on the couch in socks, drinking bourbon and watching golf like men do when they believe domestic betrayal should wait until commercial breaks. His overnight bag sat near the hallway, half-packed, which meant Vivian had told him to come home and act normal. Naomi placed printed documents on the coffee table. Mariner Crest Holdings. Cole did not look away from the television. I already told you. Temporary structure. My name is on the incorporation papers. You signed a lot of documents last year. My signature is forged. He muted the television with a sigh too theatrical to be innocent. Naomi, listen to yourself. You are exhausted. You run a company. You forget things. She stared at him. Do not gaslight me badly. It is insulting. That was when Vivian arrived. Naomi had not invited her. Cole had. Vivian walked in with her own key, wearing winter white and contempt, as if the penthouse belonged to the Whitaker family because Cole slept there. She looked at the documents on the table, then at Naomi, and her face settled into the expression she used for waitstaff who brought the wrong wine. This is unnecessary, Vivian said. Cole has explained the situation. No, Naomi said. Cole has lied about the situation. Vivian removed her gloves slowly. You should be very careful. My son has been under unbearable pressure since his father died, and you are choosing to embarrass him. He forged my signature. Allegedly. He used my brokerage. Your brokerage benefited greatly from this family. Naomi's expression went still. Vivian continued, because cruelty always mistakes silence for permission. Do not forget, Naomi, doors opened for you after you married Cole. There are women at Hawthorne Ridge who can close them just as quickly. Reputation is fragile, especially in luxury real estate. Clients must feel comfortable. They must feel they are dealing with someone trustworthy, polished, familiar. There it was. Not just classism, not just threat. Vivian's favorite kind of racism, wrapped in etiquette and deniability. The kind that never says the ugliest word because it wants to stay invited to charity luncheons. Cole looked uncomfortable, but not enough to defend his wife. That told Naomi everything. She picked up Vivian's key from the entry table and held it between two fingers. This is my home. Vivian blinked. Excuse me? My name is on the deed. My money bought it. My company pays the staff. Cole lives here because I allowed it. You enter because I tolerated it. That ended tonight. Cole stood. Naomi, stop. She turned to him. You have 2 minutes to pack what fits in that bag. If you take documents, devices, jewelry, watches, or anything purchased through my accounts, I call the police. Vivian's face flushed. You would not dare. Naomi looked at her. Try me. The room went silent. Cole stared at his wife as if he was seeing her clearly for the first time and hated the view. Vivian looked around the penthouse, suddenly aware that none of her social power could change the locks, the deed, or the fact that Naomi had proof in neat stacks on the coffee table. Cole grabbed his bag. His hands shook as he threw in a charger, cufflinks, and a shirt from the hallway closet. Naomi watched every movement. Vivian muttered something about lawyers. Naomi told her to bring several. At the door, Cole turned back. You are choosing Maya over your husband? Naomi's laugh was soft and devastating. No, I am choosing myself over a man who tried to frame me. He had no answer for that. She held out her hand. Keys. For a moment, I think Cole considered refusing. Then Naomi lifted her phone. He dropped the penthouse key into her palm. Vivian stood beside him, humiliated in a room where no one cared about her pearls. When the elevator doors closed on both of them, Naomi locked every deadbolt, called building security, and changed the access list before she allowed herself to sit down. Then she looked at the folder I had left her and dialed the secure number. That night, Naomi stopped being my brother's wife. She became my ally. Naomi called the secure number at 11:43 that night. I remember the exact time because I was sitting in a motel room outside the city with my laptop open, two monitors running transaction timelines, and a half-eaten vending machine dinner turning cold beside me. When the phone vibrated, I expected fear. I expected questions. I expected the kind of hesitation people have when they realize their marriage has become evidence. Instead, Naomi's voice came through controlled, low, and furious. "I found Mariner Crest," she said. I closed the laptop halfway. "How much?" "Enough to know my husband is either stupid or suicidal." That sounds like Cole. He used my license number, my signature, my system credentials. There are wire templates, draft sale packets, false notes, everything. I kicked him out. I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. "Are you safe?" "My building has security. Cole is locked out. Vivian is locked out. If either of them comes back, police will be called." "Good. Do not give me good, Maya. Give me next." That was when I knew Naomi Brooks Whitaker had crossed the line from victim to witness, and maybe from witness to weapon. I gave her a location and a time. Not my hotel, not her office, not anywhere Cole might think to check. The meeting spot was the third level of an underground parking garage attached to an empty medical building that had been vacant since a merger 2 years earlier. No shops, no foot traffic, weak cell reception, cameras only at the entrance and exit, which made it useful if you knew where not to stand. At 12:30 a.m., Naomi's black SUV rolled down the ramp with its headlights cutting through the concrete dark. She parked 2 spaces away from me and sat there for a moment before getting out. She had changed out of the cream trousers and navy blazer. Now she wore jeans, a black coat, and no jewelry except her wedding ring, which she had moved from her finger to a thin chain around her neck. I noticed because forensic accountants notice what people choose to keep close after betrayal. She carried a leather work bag in one hand and a silver laptop case in the other. I stayed beside my car. She stayed beside hers. The distance between us was not fear exactly. It was history. Years of family dinners, weaponized rumors, and polite conversations designed by Vivian to keep us from ever trusting each other. "For years," I said, "I thought you hated me." Naomi's mouth moved like she almost smiled but decided against it. "For years, I thought you hated me." That would be Vivian and Cole. Probably both. The garage hummed above us. Somewhere water dripped from a pipe. It was not the kind of place where families heal. Maybe that was why it worked. Nobody could pretend down there. No chandeliers, no country club terrace, no portrait of Elliot watching us from a wall. Just concrete, exhaust, and two women finally comparing notes. Naomi set the laptop case on the hood of my car. "Before I give you this, I need to know something." "If I can answer it, I will." "Are you police?" "No." "Federal?" I held her gaze. "I cannot tell you everything tonight." That is an answer. It is the safest one. She studied me carefully, and for the first time, I saw why Cole had chosen her as cover. Not because she was easy to fool, because her credibility was stronger than his. Naomi had discipline, records, staff, systems, licenses, and a reputation that made banks comfortable. Men like Cole do not build shields out of weak people. They build them out of people others already trust. "I am not protecting him," she said. "I know. No, you need to hear me. I am not protecting him because he is my husband. I am not softening it because his mother might cry. I am not going to let Vivian turn this into some private family misunderstanding. He put my name on crimes. He put my employees at risk. He put my company in the path of federal investigators. I built Brooks Lux Realty before him, and I will burn every bridge in that family before I let him drag me down with it. For the first time in days, something inside me loosened. Not relief. Relief was too clean. This was recognition. I had spent so long being the only person in the room who knew Vivian and Cole could be dangerous that hearing someone else say it out loud felt almost unreal. Naomi opened the laptop case. This was hidden in a false compartment inside his golf travel bag. He left it in the penthouse storage closet because he thought I would not look there. Why did you? Because Cole hates golf. I actually laughed once, sharp and quiet. That is fair. She handed me the laptop. It is not encrypted well. Password was his college lacrosse number and his birthday. I took photographs before touching anything. Then I shut it down and bagged it. You bagged it? My company handles luxury clients with ugly divorces. Chain of custody is not a foreign language to me. That was the moment I stopped thinking of Naomi as someone I needed to protect and started thinking of her as someone Cole should have feared from the beginning. She also handed me a flash drive from her brokerage system. On it, she said, were exported audit logs, draft wire templates, internal messages, login timestamps, IP records, and security footage from the office showing Cole physically handing her the Cayman routing slip. She had pulled access reports showing that her credentials were used at times when she was in client meetings, on flights, and once speaking at a real estate conference in Atlanta. She had copied employee statements from 2 assistants who heard Cole pressure staff to move paperwork fast because the Whitaker estate needed liquidity. I did not plug anything in there. Evidence does not get previewed in garages like movie props. I placed both items into separate evidence sleeves from the kit in my trunk, marked the time, location, source, and condition, then photographed each seal. Naomi watched without asking why I had evidence bags in my car. She already knew enough to stop pretending. This goes to people above me, I said. Once it does, there is no pulling it back. I do not want it back. Cole will likely be charged. Good. Vivian may be exposed too. Better. Your divorce will get ugly. He will blame you. She will try to ruin your reputation. There may be subpoenas, interviews, records requests. Your name could appear in filings before it is cleared. Naomi folded her arms. Maya, my name is already in his shell company. My signature is already forged. My license is already attached to wire fraud. The ugliness started before you walked into my office. At least now I get to participate in the ending. I respected that answer more than she knew. Too many people think justice is a clean door you walk through once you find the truth. It is not. Justice is expensive. It is invasive. It asks victims to relive what the guilty tried to hide. It turns private humiliation into public paperwork. I needed Naomi to understand the cost because I knew the cost. I had been paying it since my father's hospital room. I told her about Vivian's Thanksgiving invitation then. It had arrived by text while Naomi was searching corporate records. Your brother and I think enough damage has been done. Come to Thanksgiving. We can discuss a peaceful resolution like adults. That was Vivian. Poison inside a lace glove. Naomi read the message from my phone and gave it back. She wants something signed. Yes. Estate release? Probably. Maybe a quitclaim deed too. They need me out before the real probate fight starts. Who will be there? Vivian, Cole, a family attorney named Martin Klein, Charles Renner from the board, maybe others. Vivian said dinner, which means there will be no dinner. Naomi looked toward the dark ramp. You are going? Yes. Alone? Not exactly. Her eyes returned to mine. Wired? I did not answer. Again, she understood the silence. For a while, neither of us spoke. The garage felt colder than before. Thanksgiving had always been Vivian's favorite stage. She knew how to make a table beautiful enough to hide cruelty beneath crystal glasses. When we were children, she would seat Cole near my father and me, near whichever relative had recently been told I needed guidance. She gave thanks like a sermon, then cut people apart over pie. Part of me still remembered the good pieces, though. My father carving turkey badly, the smell of sage, his quiet wink when Vivian criticized my posture. Grief makes even poisoned rooms complicated. Naomi's voice softened a little. Are you okay to go back into that house? No. Then why go? Because they need to believe I am cornered. And are you? I looked at the sealed evidence bags in my trunk. No. Naomi nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Stay away from Cole unless your attorney is present. Preserve everything. Do not confront him about details he does not know you have. And if Vivian contacts you, record what you legally can and send it through the secure number. She already threatened me tonight. She will do it again. I hope she does. There was no performance in her voice, just patience. Vivian had spent her whole life measuring women by how easily they could be shamed. Naomi was about to teach her the danger of choosing the wrong target. Before we left, Naomi removed the wedding ring from the chain around her neck. She looked at it in her palm for a long moment, then slipped it into an evidence envelope and handed it to me. What is this? I asked. Cole bought it through a joint account I now believe was funded partly by fraudulent transfers. If it matters, use it. If it does not, I never want to see it again. I wrote the description on the envelope while she watched. Platinum ring, oval diamond. Surrendered voluntarily by Naomi Brooks Whitaker. Potential proceeds trace issue. The language was dry. The moment was not. When she handed over that ring, she was not just ending a marriage. She was refusing the last symbol Cole could use to claim loyalty from her. At the exit ramp, before we got into our cars, Naomi paused. You know, we were never supposed to compare notes, she said. I know. That is why they lasted as long as they did. And why they are going to lose. She gave one small nod, then drove out first. I waited 3 minutes before following. Procedure mattered. Distance mattered. So did the fact that for the first time since my father died, I was not carrying the truth alone. By dawn, Special Agent Reed had the evidence. By noon, federal analysts were imaging Cole's laptop. By evening, the first matches came back. Forged document drafts, offshore transfer instructions, gambling payment records, and messages tying Mariner Crest Holdings to stolen Whitaker funds. Cole and Vivian had spent years underestimating women they thought were too wounded, too proud, or too isolated to fight together. They had no idea what was coming. My mother thought Thanksgiving would be the night she forced me out of the family forever. She had no idea I was coming wired. Thanksgiving morning arrived gray and wet, the kind of weather that made the city look rinsed clean even when everything underneath was still filthy. I met Special Agent Reed in the back lot of a closed pharmacy, 2 miles from my childhood home. He sat in an unmarked sedan with the engine running and a paper cup of coffee untouched in the console. I slid into the passenger seat, and for a few seconds, neither of us said anything. Reed was good at silence. Most investigators are. Silence gives people room to reveal whether they are afraid, angry, or lying. That morning, I was all three in different ways. He opened a small black case between us. Inside was a microphone no bigger than a shirt button, a transmitter, and adhesive strips sealed in plastic. Everything looked too small to carry the weight of what I was about to do. Reed explained the recording process again, even though I already knew it. Audio would transmit directly to the federal evidence server. Backup storage would run locally. I was not to provoke violence, not to disclose my role, not to threaten anyone, and not to remain if Cole became physically dangerous. Procedure sounded clean inside the car. It always does before real people start bleeding emotion all over it. Last chance to step back, Reed said. I looked through the windshield at the rain collecting on the glass. You know I cannot. I know you believe that. No, I promised my father. That ended the conversation. Reed attached the microphone beneath the neckline of my sweater and tested the audio while I counted my breaths. I had worn soft clothes on purpose. Gray sweater, black pants, flat boots, no jewelry, except my father's old watch under my sleeve. Vivian expected me to arrive looking diminished. I was willing to give her the picture she wanted if it made her careless. The worst part is that a small, stupid piece of me still wanted my mother to open the door and say she was sorry. Even after the funeral, even after the fake will, even after the frozen accounts and every lie she had signed her name to. That is what toxic families do. They train you to hope for crumbs and then make you ashamed for starving. I knew Thanksgiving was a trap, but grief does not always obey evidence. Some wounded part of me still remembered being 8 years old, sitting beside my father while he carved turkey too thick and winked at me when Vivian complained. Some part of me still wanted a home that had never really existed. By the time I parked outside the Whitaker house, the rain had slowed to mist. The house looked perfect from the street. All warm windows and trimmed hedges and seasonal wreaths Vivian probably paid someone else to hang. For years, people had called it beautiful. I had always thought it looked like a museum exhibit about family instead of a place where one actually lived. I walked up the stone path, pressed the bell, and waited. Vivian opened the door wearing burgundy silk and a smile soft enough to fool a camera. Maya, she said, I'm glad you came. No, you are not. Her smile tightened. Let us try to be civil today. She leaned in like she might hug me. I stepped past her before she could perform forgiveness for anyone watching from inside. The foyer smelled like cinnamon, polish, and roasted meat, but when I looked toward the dining room, there was no dinner on the table, no place settings, no candles, no pie cooling on the sideboard, just stacks of documents, pens, file folders, and a row of people sitting beneath the chandelier like a committee assembled for an execution. Cole stood near the fireplace with a glass of whiskey in his hand, jaw unshaven, eyes red around the edges. Martin Klein, the family attorney Vivian had found after the funeral, sat at the head of the table with a leather portfolio open in front of him. Charles Renner from the board was beside him, looking uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to leave. 2 other board members sat farther down, pretending this was a business meeting instead of an ambush. I looked at the empty table. So, dinner was a metaphor. Cole gave a humorless laugh. Do not start. Martin Klein stood and buttoned his jacket. He had the glossy confidence of an attorney who mistook intimidation for skill. Miss Whitaker, thank you for joining us. Your family would like to resolve this matter privately. My family froze my accounts and accused me of theft. Vivian lowered herself into a chair. Because you forced us to protect the estate. I stayed near the doorway. Good sight lines, clear exit. Reed would have approved. Klein slid a packet toward the empty chair across from him. This is a release of claims, a quitclaim deed concerning any interest you believe you may have in the family residence, and an acknowledgement that you will cooperate in the return of misappropriated trust assets. Assets you claim I stole. That is one way to phrase it. It is the only way to phrase it if you want me to sign a confession disguised as paperwork. Charles shifted in his chair. Cole drank from his glass. Vivian watched me with the irritated patience of a woman waiting for a servant to understand instructions. Klein's voice hardened. If you sign, Mrs. Whitaker and Mr. Whitaker are prepared not to pursue additional criminal complaints at this time. At this time, I repeated. Yes. So, the offer is that I sign away inheritance rights, property claims, and any defense to your accusation. And in exchange, my mother and brother may choose not to call the police today. Vivian snapped. Do not twist this. I am clarifying. You are performing. I looked at Klein. Is that the offer? He hesitated. Broadly, yes. And if I refuse? Cole set his glass down too hard. Then we stop protecting you. I turned toward him. From what? From consequences. What consequences? He leaned forward, eyes bright with anger. Theft, fraud, elder abuse if we decide to get specific. You think because Dad pitied you, everyone else has to? There it was. Clean audio, clear threat. Felt the microphone under my sweater like a second pulse. Vivian placed one hand over her chest. Your father would be devastated by what you have done. My father knew exactly what I had done. Cole's expression flickered. What is that supposed to mean? It means I am not signing. The room changed instantly. Klein sat back. Charles rubbed his forehead. Vivian's face went flat, all the softness gone, and I saw the woman underneath the mother costume. Cole came around the table fast enough that one board member half stood and then sat again. You think this is a game? Cole said. No. You think you can walk in here with that smug little face and talk down to us? I think you should move away from me. He slammed his palm onto the table. Pens jumped. One folder slid to the floor. I should drag you out by your hair and leave you on the sidewalk where you belong. Nobody spoke. That silence told me more than the threat did. Vivian did not tell him to stop. Charles did not object. Klein did not warn his client to shut up. They all just sat there, calculating whether Cole's violence might still serve their purpose if I reacted badly enough. Inside, I was not calm. I want that understood. I was trained, experienced, prepared, and wired, but I was still a daughter in the house where my mother had taught me to fear humiliation more than pain. My heart was hammering. My mouth was dry. Every instinct told me to step back. Instead, I looked at Cole's hand on the table and remembered my father's voice. Numbers do not lie. People do. I pulled my phone from my pocket. Vivian's eyes narrowed. What are you doing? Adding something to the discussion. Before anyone could stop me, I connected to the house speaker system. Vivian had installed a smart audio setup after deciding visible speakers were vulgar. I knew the password because my father had used the same one for everything in that house until I made him change his business accounts. Cole's voice filled the dining room a second later, grainy but unmistakable. Dad could not even talk by then, the recording said. You think anyone is going to question the date? Mom will back me. She hates Maya too much to admit she raised the wrong kid. The room froze. Cole's face emptied. On the recording, another male voice asked about the missing money. Cole laughed, drunk and loose. Maya is perfect for it. Nobody trusts her. We say she got desperate, moved the funds offshore, maybe used some hacker boyfriend nobody can find. Mom cries, board panics, I clean it up. I just need the will to look official enough to scare her off. Vivian stood so quickly her chair scraped backward. Turn that off. I did not. The recording continued. Cole talked about a bookie, about pressure, about moving proceeds through a Cayman entity, about making Naomi's brokerage look like the source if anything went wrong. He complained that Vivian was easy to manage because she cared more about being right than being careful. That line hurt her more than the crimes. I saw it in her face. She did not look horrified that he had forged a will. She looked betrayed that he had insulted her intelligence. Charles Renner pushed back from the table. Cole, What the hell is this? Cole pointed at me. It is fake. It is your voice, one board member said quietly. It is edited. Martin Klein was already gathering his papers. His face had gone gray beneath the expensive tan. I am withdrawing from this conversation immediately. Nobody in this room should say another word without criminal counsel. Vivian spun on him. Sit down. No, Mrs. Whitaker, I strongly suggest you retain separate counsel. Coward, Cole spat. Klein ignored him and left so fast he forgot one of his pens. Charles stood next, then the other board members. None of them apologized to me. Cowards rarely do when the truth arrives. They just distance themselves from the blast radius and later pretend they had concerns all along. When the front door closed behind them, only Vivian, Cole, and I remained in the dining room. The house felt enormous around us, hollow and expensive. Vivian looked at me with pure hatred. You made that. No, you have always been jealous of him. No, you forged something. You trapped him. You trapped your own brother on Thanksgiving. I stared at her. Cole admitted he forged Dad's will, planned to blame me, and intended to sacrifice Naomi if necessary. That is what you just heard. I heard my daughter attack her family. Cole had stopped arguing. He was breathing hard, one hand gripping the back of a chair. He looked less like a mastermind than a man watching all his exits narrow at once. Vivian reached for a wine glass and threw it against the wall. Red wine and glass exploded across the pale wallpaper. Now look what you have done, she whispered. Then she picked up her phone and dialed 911. Cole's head jerked up. Mom, do not. Vivian ignored him. Her voice changed the second the operator answered. It became breathless, terrified, small. My daughter broke into my home, she said. She is threatening us. She destroyed property. Please send someone. I am afraid she is going to hurt my son. I stood perfectly still. Cole stared at her like even he could not believe she was doing it. Vivian continued, adding details that had not happened, arranging the lie while standing beside the shattered glass she had thrown herself. She said I was unstable. She said I had been obsessed with money since my father's death. She said I had forced my way inside and threatened to ruin them if they did not give me access to estate funds. Every sentence was another nail, not in my coffin, but in hers. That was the moment I stopped thinking of her as my mother. Not because she hated me. I already knew that. But because she was willing to put me in a jail cell just to avoid admitting she had been wrong. She was willing to turn the police into one more weapon. She was willing to gamble my freedom on a performance. When she hung up, she looked triumphant and shaking. You should leave before they arrive. I picked up my coat from the back of a chair. That call was a mistake. No, Maya, coming here was your mistake. I looked at Cole. You might want to tell her what happens to false reports connected to an active financial investigation. Cole said nothing. For the first time that night, Vivian seemed uncertain. What does that mean? I walked toward the foyer. It means you should have served dinner. Outside, the mist had turned back into rain. I walked down the stone path without running. Behind me, Vivian began shouting my name, but I did not turn around. At the curb, an unmarked sedan rolled forward half a block away, headlights off until I reached my car. Reed would have the audio already. Every threat, every demand, every false statement to emergency services, every ugly little truth wrapped in my mother's perfect holiday house. I drove away before the patrol cars arrived. My hands shook again, but this time I did not hate them for it. Fear meant I was still human. Leaving meant I was no longer obedient. Vivian thought the police call would scare me. Instead, it became another exhibit in the federal case against her. The local police arrived at the Whitaker house 12 minutes after I left. I know because Reed told me later, and because Vivian tried to use those 12 minutes to rearrange reality. She placed herself near the shattered wine glass, loosened her hair, and cried hard enough to make her mascara move for the first time in years. Cole, unfortunately for her, had reached the edge of his usefulness. When officers asked whether I had broken into the house, he said the door had been opened for me. When they asked whether I had destroyed property, he looked at the wine on the wall and said nothing. When they asked whether I had threatened anyone, he muttered that it was a family dispute and refused to elaborate. Vivian had expected loyalty. What she got was a son too scared to repeat a lie that might later be compared against recordings, witnesses, and his own trembling memory. The officers found no signs of forced entry, no injuries, no weapon, and no evidence that I had done anything except leave before they arrived. One of them warned Vivian that filing a false report was not a tool for settling estate arguments. She took that warning as an insult. Vivian always believed consequences were rude when directed at her. By the next morning, she was not frightened. She was humiliated, which was worse. Fear might have made her quiet. Humiliation made her theatrical. She started calling people before breakfast. Former board wives, charity committee women, the Hawthorne Ridge membership chair, anyone who might still believe she was the grieving widow under siege by an unstable daughter. But gossip had already begun moving faster than she could manage. Board members had left Thanksgiving pale and silent. Martin Klein had withdrawn. Charles Renner was distancing himself from Cole with the speed of a man who had suddenly remembered ethics existed. Vivian could feel control slipping, and when Vivian lost control in private, she went public to prove she still had it. So she hosted lunch at Hawthorne Ridge Country Club. It was an insane choice, which made it perfectly Vivian. She booked the terrace room, requested the white linen service, and invited 6 women whose opinions mattered to people who thought social death was worse than prison. She told them it was a small Thanksgiving weekend gathering, something elegant after a painful season. What she really wanted was witnesses. Not legal witnesses this time. Social ones. Women who would see her composed, see Cole at her side, see that the Whitaker name still belonged at the best table in the room. Naomi told me later that Vivian's mistake was assuming public image belonged only to her. Cole arrived wearing sunglasses again, though the terrace was shaded and the sky was cloudy. He looked exhausted. His face had that gray, swollen quality people get when they are sleeping badly and drinking worse. Vivian placed him beside her, like a wounded prince, and kept touching his arm whenever someone looked too long. He barely spoke. His phone buzzed constantly. Gambling creditors do not pause for grief, scandal, or country club lunches. He had been locked out of Naomi's penthouse, cut off from her accounts, and removed from her building's access list. Without Naomi's money and credibility, Cole was discovering how expensive his own life had become. Vivian performed beautifully for the first 20 minutes. She spoke softly about resilience. She thanked people for their prayers. She implied without saying directly that Maya had become unstable after Elliot's death. She mentioned attorneys, privacy, family pain, and protecting the legacy. The women nodded with the solemn curiosity of people pretending not to enjoy scandal. Cole stared at his untouched iced tea. Every now and then, Vivian squeezed his hand like he was the victim. Then Naomi walked in. She did not rush. She did not raise her voice. She crossed the terrace in a charcoal suit tailored so sharply it made every pastel lunch dress in the room look like costume fabric. Her hair was smooth, her expression unreadable, and beside her walked a process server carrying a slim folder. The entire terrace changed before anyone said a word. Forks paused. Glasses hovered. Vivian saw Naomi and went completely still. Cole looked up too late. The process server stopped beside the table. Cole Whitaker? Cole's mouth opened, then closed. Naomi looked at him. Answer him. Vivian rose halfway. This is a private event. No, Naomi said. This is a country club terrace. You made it public when you decided to perform. The process server placed the folder directly onto Cole's plate, on top of his folded napkin. You have been served. No one breathed. Cole stared at the papers as if they had appeared from nowhere. Vivian's face flushed red beneath her careful makeup. The women at the table looked down, then immediately up again, because not one of them was going to miss whatever happened next. Naomi, Vivian said tightly, do not make a scene. Naomi turned her head. Vivian, I am the scene. It was the kind of sentence only a woman with receipts should say. Vivian understood that. So did everyone else. Cole grabbed the folder and opened it with shaking hands. Divorce petition. Emergency financial restraints. Notice regarding joint accounts and shared credit facilities. Property access restrictions. Preservation demand for documents, devices, and financial records. Naomi had not come to argue. She had come to formally separate her life from his in front of the exact audience Vivian valued most. This is ridiculous, Cole said, but his voice cracked on the last word. Naomi remained standing. I filed for divorce on grounds including financial misconduct, fraud, and misuse of marital and business-linked assets. Effective immediately, you have no access to my personal funds, no access to Brooks Lux Realty accounts, no access to my penthouse, and no authority to represent yourself as connected to my company in any business dealing. Vivian's lips parted. You cannot just announce private marital matters in public. Naomi looked at her with almost gentle contempt. You threatened my reputation in my own home. You told me women at this club could close doors for me. So I thought it was appropriate to clarify, in front of those same doors, that your son is not my liability anymore. One woman at the table lowered her eyes. Another lifted her phone slightly, then thought better of it. The silence was more damaging than laughter would have been. Vivian had spent her whole life fearing whispers. Naomi had given her an entire terrace full of them. Cole stood so abruptly his chair scraped backward. You are lying. About which part? All of it. Naomi's face did not change. Then you should have no problem explaining to your attorney why your name appears on offshore transfer instructions, why my signature appears on documents I never signed, and why your device accessed my brokerage system after midnight. Vivian hissed. Enough. No, Naomi said. Enough was when your son forged my name. Enough was when he tried to use my company as a shield. Enough was when you walked into my home and threatened to ruin a business I built before I married into your family. Cole looked around the terrace, suddenly aware that everyone could hear. Naomi, please. That word did something strange to the room. Please, not sorry, not, I did not do it. Not let me explain. Just please. Because men like Cole only discover humility when an audience witnesses the bill coming due. Naomi took one step closer, lowering her voice just enough to make everyone lean in. If you come to my building, security will call the police. If you contact my employees, my attorneys will respond. If you move, hide, destroy, or alter any records, I will consider it intentional spoliation. And if you use my name one more time to borrow money, influence a client, or comfort your mother, I will bury you so thoroughly in civil court that federal court will have to wait its turn. Vivian slapped her palm on the table. You ungrateful little... Naomi turned on her. Finish that sentence carefully. Vivian stopped. That may have been Naomi's finest victory, Not the papers, not Cole's shaking hands, not the watching terrace. It was making Vivian Whitaker swallow an insult in public because everyone knew exactly what kind of word wanted to come next. Naomi picked up a glass of water from the table, not to drink, just to move it away from Cole's hand. I am not here to fight. I am here to notify. The marriage is over, the financial connection is over, the cover is over. Cole's face collapsed. You are choosing Maya. Naomi gave him a look so cold it should have lowered the room temperature. You keep saying that because you cannot comprehend a woman choosing herself. Then she turned and walked out the same way she had entered. Calm, elegant, untouchable. The process server followed. Nobody stopped her. Nobody comforted Vivian. Nobody asked Cole if he was okay. The entire terrace watched him stand there with divorce papers in his hand and panic spreading across his face like spilled ink. Vivian tried to recover. Of course she did. She sat down, lifted her water glass, and told the table Naomi was emotional, that grief and stress affected people differently, that certain women did not understand how established families handled private matters. But the magic was gone. Her voice had lost its authority. The women nodded politely, but their eyes had changed. They had seen Vivian silenced. They had seen Cole served. They had heard words like fraud, offshore transfers, forged signatures, and police. In Vivian's world, perception was reality, and Naomi had just changed reality over lunch. By the time the story reached me, it had already traveled through 3 board spouses, 2 attorney's assistants, and 1 Hawthorne Ridge bartender, who apparently understood more about Whitaker family affairs than half the directors. Naomi called me that evening, not triumphant exactly, but lighter. I did it, she said. I heard. Of course you did. Are you safe? Yes. Angry, but safe. That still counts. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, he looked small. I knew what she meant. Not physically. Cole had always been tall, broad-shouldered, golden in the way Vivian worshipped. But men built out of entitlement shrink quickly when the women holding up their world step away. Small is what was left after the lies moved out, I said. Naomi exhaled, and for the first time since all of this began, I heard something like grief in her silence. She had loved him once. That mattered, even if he had not deserved it. Betrayal does not erase love immediately. It turns love into evidence of your own hope, and that can be its own kind of wound. By the next morning, Cole had lost his wife, his home, his money, his social cover, and the illusion that Vivian could protect him from consequences. His creditors were circling. The board was retreating. His attorney was gone. Naomi had severed every useful tie he had tried to turn into a shield. All that was left was getting him under oath. The deposition took place 8 days after Naomi served Cole at Hawthorne Ridge. By then, Vivian had stopped pretending this was only a family dispute, but she had not yet accepted that it was becoming a criminal disaster. There is a dangerous period in every investigation where guilty people know something is wrong, but not enough to understand how wrong. That was where Vivian and Cole were living. They could feel doors closing, but they still believed the right performance, the right lawyer, or the right lie could reopen them. The law office was neutral territory. All beige walls, glass partitions, filtered water, and conference chairs designed to look expensive without being comfortable. A court reporter sat near the end of the table with her machine ready. A videographer adjusted a camera on a tripod. Daniel Mercer sat beside me with a yellow legal pad, 2 pens, and the same calm expression he had worn since the day Vivian first accused me. I wore a plain navy dress and no makeup except concealer beneath my eyes. Not because I was trying to look weak. Because Vivian already believed I was weak, and people speak more freely when they think the person across from them cannot hurt them. Vivian arrived first with Nora Blake, her new attorney. Nora was not like Martin Klein. She did not swagger. She did not smile too much. She carried one slim binder and watched the room before she spoke. I knew within 30 seconds that she was competent, which meant she would either become a problem or eventually realize her clients had made her one. Cole arrived 3 minutes later, late enough to show disrespect, early enough not to look frightened. He looked worse than he had at the country club. His face was thinner. His expensive watch was gone. His left hand kept closing and opening like he missed holding a drink. Vivian looked at me once and then looked away with theatrical pain. She was dressed in dove gray, soft and widow-like, as if fabric could testify. Cole dropped into his chair and whispered something to Nora. Nora did not laugh. That was the first sign she was already tired of him. The court reporter swore Vivian in first. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Vivian lifted her chin. I do. I watched her say it and felt something old and childish twist inside me. I had seen my mother lie at dinner tables, in hospital rooms, at funerals, and in court filings. But hearing her promise the truth while preparing to murder it still landed differently. Some lies are cruel because they are false. Others are cruel because the liar knows exactly what sacred thing they are stepping over. Daniel began gently. That was his gift. He sounded almost boring when he was building a trap. Mrs. Whitaker, you have previously stated that your daughter, Maya Whitaker, was unemployed at the time of your husband's death. Is that correct? Yes. And you believe that based on what? Based on her life, Vivian said. She never discussed employment. She disappeared often. She had no visible career. Did you ever ask her directly where she worked? Vivian's mouth tightened. Maya has always been evasive. That was not my question. Nora glanced at Vivian. Answer only the question asked. Vivian exhaled. No, I did not ask directly. But you represented in court filings that she had no legitimate employment. I believed it to be true. Daniel wrote something down. You also stated that you personally saw Maya using Elliot Whitaker's laptop after his death. Yes. When did you see this? The evening after the funeral. Where? At the house. What exactly did you see? Vivian folded her hands. She was in Elliot's study. She had his laptop open. She was transferring something. When I entered, she closed it quickly. Later, we discovered the $4 million was gone. I did not move. I barely breathed. Elliot's laptop had been collected by federal investigators before his death under a signed authorization, imaged, sealed, and placed into evidence custody. By the evening after the funeral, it was not in the house. It was physically impossible for Vivian to have seen me use it, but she did not know that yet. She only knew the lie sounded useful. Daniel's voice remained flat. You are certain it was Elliot's laptop? Yes. You are certain it was after the funeral? Yes. And you are certain Maya was using it to move funds? I saw enough. Enough to accuse her of stealing $4 million. Yes. Nora's pen paused for half a second. She looked at Vivian, then at Daniel, and I saw the smallest shift in her expression. Competent attorneys hear danger before clients do. Cole testified after lunch. By then, Vivian had convinced herself she had done well because nobody had shouted. That is another mistake liars make. They think calm questions mean weak questions. Cole sat down, swore to tell the truth, and immediately began damaging himself with the confidence of a man who had never been punished for anything important. Daniel asked about the will first. Mr. Whitaker, When did your father allegedly sign the document leaving primary control of his estate to you? Cole gave the date listed on the forged paper. And where was he? In his hospital room. What was his condition? Lucid. Tired, obviously, but lucid. Was he speaking? Yes. Clearly? Cole shifted. Clear enough. Was he sitting up? Yes. Did anyone else witness this? No. Dad wanted privacy. Did he ask for an attorney? No. Did he ask for a notary? No. Did he explain why he was changing a long-standing estate plan without witnesses, counsel, or medical confirmation? Cole's jaw tightened. He trusted me. That sentence sat in the room like spoiled milk. My father had trusted Cole once. That was true. He had trusted him because fathers sometimes mistake charm for character when they desperately want to believe their children are good. But by the time that fake will was dated, Elliot Whitaker was sedated, intubated, and unable to speak. His medical records did not just contradict Cole. They erased the possibility of Cole's version entirely. Daniel let a silence pass before changing direction. Mr. Whitaker, are you familiar with Mariner Crest Holdings? Cole's eyes flickered. No. Never heard of it? No. Are you familiar with a routing number ending in 4782? His hand closed into a fist beneath the table. No. Did you ever provide wire instructions connected to that routing number to Naomi Brooks Whitaker? No. Did you ever ask Brooks Lux Realty to rush the sale of commercial warehouse assets connected to Whitaker Commercial Holdings? No. Nora turned slightly toward him. Cole? He looked annoyed. What? She kept her voice careful. Listen to the exact question before answering. Daniel did not look at Nora. Mr. Whitaker, are you stating under oath that you never gave your wife a wire transfer slip naming Mariner Crest Holdings as beneficiary? Cole leaned back. Naomi handled her own business. If her staff made clerical mistakes, that is not on me. So, now you are aware of Mariner Crest Holdings? His face changed. Vivian closed her eyes for one brief second. I mean, Cole said, I have heard the name since all this drama started. From whom? Naomi. When? I do not remember. Before or after she filed for divorce? Cole swallowed. After. Before or after Thanksgiving? I said I do not remember. Daniel nodded as if that answer helped him. It did. Then he asked about offshore transfers, gambling debts, vendor invoices, consulting entities, and whether Cole had ever used someone else's login credentials to access brokerage records. Cole denied everything, not carefully, not strategically, angrily. The more Daniel asked, the more Cole treated the questions like insults instead of evidence markers. By the end, even Nora Blake looked pale. Vivian watched her son with the fixed expression of someone willing reality to rearrange itself around him. I had seen that look my entire life. Cole could break a lamp, and Vivian would ask why the table had been too close. Cole could fail a class, and Vivian would blame the teacher. Cole could steal, forge, lie, and threaten, and Vivian would still search the room for someone else to accuse. That day, under oath, her protection became another cage around him. She had raised him to believe denial was power. Now denial was becoming perjury. When it was my turn to sit quietly while their attorney asked me questions, Nora was measured. She asked where I lived, whether I had accessed family accounts, whether I had accepted money from Elliot before his death, whether I had moved trust assets, whether I had contacted Naomi, whether I had recordings from Thanksgiving. Daniel objected where necessary. I answered only what I could, not one extra word. The truth is strongest when it does not feel the need to decorate itself. Vivian hated my calm. I could tell. Every time I gave a short answer, she looked more irritated, as if she missed the version of me she could provoke into tears. Cole stared at the table. His confidence had begun to leak out of him hour by hour. At the end, after the videographer stopped recording and the court reporter packed her machine, Vivian approached me near the hallway. Daniel moved slightly, but I shook my head. I wanted to hear whatever she thought she still had. "You looked very pleased with yourself," she said. "I am not pleased. You should be ashamed. Dragging your family through this." I looked at her carefully. "You dragged us here when you lied." Her eyes sharpened. "You will never beat us, Maya, whatever little documents you think you have. Whatever Naomi told you, whatever fantasy you are living in, you are still you. And Cole is still your father's son." For years, that line would have gutted me. Cole is your father's son, as if I were something else, a mistake, a burden, an unfortunate branch on the family tree. But that day, it sounded almost pitiful. Vivian still thought love was inheritance. She still thought being chosen by her meant being protected by the universe. I leaned closer, not enough to threaten, only enough that she could hear me clearly. "I will see you in federal court." For the first time, she did not have an immediate answer. The funeral had been cruel. Thanksgiving had been vicious. But the deposition was something else. Watching them lie under oath was like watching them bury the last version of the family I used to wish we could be. They had every chance to stop, every chance to tell a smaller truth before the larger one swallowed them. Instead, Vivian lied about a laptop that was not there, and Cole lied about a father who could not speak. They walked out of that room thinking they had survived. They had no idea they had just narrated their own indictment. By the time we returned to federal court, Vivian had convinced herself that the deposition had been a temporary inconvenience. That was her greatest talent. She could stand in the middle of a burning room and criticize the smoke for being dramatic. Cole was quieter now, thinner, more watchful, but Vivian still entered the courtroom as if posture could change evidence. She wore black again, but not funeral black this time. This was battle black. Sharp dress, pearl earrings, controlled sorrow, widowhood arranged like armor. She did not look at me when she passed our table. Cole did. His eyes were restless, bloodshot, and angry in a way that told me he had not slept enough to be strategic. Nora Blake sat beside them with her binder closed. She had the expression of a lawyer who had begun checking every statement her clients made against facts they did not know she possessed. Competent attorneys do not enjoy surprises, and Vivian and Cole had become walking surprises. Daniel Mercer sat beside me with the sealed federal envelope resting in front of him. I kept my hands folded in my lap the way I had on the first day, because some rituals are not about weakness. Some are about reminding yourself that you do not have to move just because someone else is falling apart. Vivian was called back to the stand. She performed grief again, though not as well as before. The edges were showing. Her answers came too quickly. Her tissue remained dry. She repeated that I had stolen from my dying father, that I had manipulated him, that I had no legitimate employment, that I had always been resentful of Cole. Each lie sounded thinner in the room now, but she could not hear it. My mother had lied about me for so long that I think part of her believed repetition had made ownership. If she said I was useless enough times, maybe the world owed her agreement. Judge Helena Ward listened without interruption until Vivian said, for the third time, that I had never held a real job. Then Daniel stood. "My client will not be testifying at this moment, Your Honor," he said. "However, we are prepared to submit a sealed federal document that clarifies two matters central to this proceeding." Judge Ward looked at him. "What two matters?" "Where the $4 million actually went, and what Miss Maya Whitaker actually does for a living. That was the moment Vivian laughed. Not loudly, just enough to show contempt. Cole smiled too, that old golden child smirk surfacing from under panic because humiliating me was the family language he knew best. Your Honor, Vivian said. With respect, Maya has never worked a real job. Judge Ward accepted the envelope from the bailiff, examined the seal, and opened it. The courtroom became so quiet I could hear the soft mechanical sound of the air system overhead. I watched the judge read the first page, then the second. Her expression changed slowly, but completely. The courtroom did not explode. Truth rarely arrives like thunder. Sometimes it enters as paperwork, stamped, signed, and impossible to charm. When Judge Ward looked up, she did not look at Vivian first. She looked at me. Ms. Whitaker, she said, I understand now why your counsel has proceeded with unusual restraint. I said nothing. Vivian shifted on the witness stand. Your Honor, whatever my daughter has submitted, I am sure it has been manipulated. Judge Ward's eyes moved to her. Mrs. Whitaker, you are still under oath. I suggest you remember that before you speak again. Vivian's mouth closed. The judge lifted the document slightly. This court has received sealed confirmation from federal authorities that Maya Whitaker is not unemployed. She is a senior forensic accountant with IRS criminal investigation. Her professional work includes money laundering analysis, tax evasion investigations, corporate embezzlement tracing, and forensic review of complex financial transactions. The sound that left Vivian was not a word. Cole's face went blank. Behind us, someone in the gallery inhaled sharply. Nora Blake did not look shocked. She looked like a woman whose worst suspicion had just received a federal letterhead. I thought I would feel triumphant when the judge said it out loud. Instead, I felt tired. My mother had spent my entire adult life calling me useless, and a federal judge had to correct her before she believed I was anything else. Even then, I do not think she believed it. I think she simply understood that other people now did. And, to Vivian, public belief mattered more than truth. Judge Ward continued. The repeated representations made to this court regarding Ms. Whitaker's employment status were false. Those representations were used to support claims regarding motive, financial desperation, and alleged flight risk. That is extremely serious. Vivian gripped the edge of the witness stand. I did not know. Daniel spoke quietly. You did not ask. Judge Ward looked at him once, then back to Vivian. Do not respond, Mr. Mercer. Mrs. Whitaker, your lack of knowledge did not prevent you from making sworn statements as fact. Cole leaned toward Nora, whispering urgently. She held up one hand to silence him without looking away from the judge. Then came the part that mattered most. Judge Ward turned another page. The $4 million at issue in this proceeding were not stolen by Maya Whitaker. Those funds were transferred pursuant to authorization signed by Elliot Whitaker before his death, under federal supervision, into a protected account connected to an active financial crimes investigation. Vivian shook her head slowly. No. Yes, the judge said. No, Elliot would never. Elliot Whitaker discovered financial discrepancies before his death. He identified suspicious transfers, questionable vendor payments, irregular collateralization of property assets, and possible misuse of company structures connected to Whitaker Commercial Holdings. According to the federal submission, he contacted authorities and cooperated voluntarily. Cole looked like the floor had dropped beneath his chair. His hands gripped the table, and, for once, there was no performance left in him. Just fear. The judge's voice remained controlled, but anger had entered it. Mr. Whitaker appears to have suspected his son was stealing from the company. He further appears to have suspected that Mrs. Whitaker either knew, should have known, or was willfully blind to conduct that benefited Cole Whitaker. Vivian turned toward Cole. What is she talking about? Cole did not answer. That silence was the first honest thing he had offered all day. My father's face came back to me then, not as he looked in the casket, not as Vivian had displayed him beneath expensive flowers, but as he had looked in his office the night he showed me the first irregular statement. Sick, ashamed, angry at himself for trusting too long, but still clear. He had not asked me to save his fortune. He had not asked me to punish my brother. He had asked me to protect the truth, because he understood too late that a family built on lies can turn even love into a hiding place. My father did not ask me to save his money. He asked me to save the truth. For 3 months, that was the only thing that kept me from breaking. Judge Ward continued reading from the sealed summary. The court is also advised that subsequent efforts by Vivian Whitaker and Cole Whitaker to recover, redirect, or litigate control over these funds intersect with monitored activity in the federal investigation. This includes alleged forged estate documents, attempted offshore transfer routing, pressure placed on third-party business entities, and sworn statements that appear to contradict documentary, medical, and custodial evidence. Nora Blake slowly closed her binder. Then she leaned toward Cole and whispered something I could not hear. He shook his head like a child refusing medicine. Vivian's voice rose. "This is impossible. My husband trusted Cole." Judge Ward's face hardened. "Mrs. Whitaker, your husband appears to have trusted Maya." That broke something open in the room, not loudly, not visibly to anyone else, maybe. But inside me, those words landed with the force of a hand finally unclenching around my heart. Vivian had spent years making love feel like something I had failed to earn. Judge Ward did not mean the sentence as comfort, but it reached me anyway. My father trusted Maya, not the daughter Vivian described, not the family problem, me. Cole stood halfway. "Your Honor, I need to speak." Nora grabbed his sleeve. "Sit down. I need to explain." "You need to sit down." Judge Ward looked at him. "Mr. Whitaker, I strongly advise you to listen to your attorney." Cole sat, breathing hard. The judge placed the document on her bench. Given the contents of this sealed submission and the apparent overlap between this civil proceeding and an active federal criminal investigation, this court is suspending the present civil matter pending further proceedings. Court security will open the side entrance. Vivian looked confused. Side entrance? The doors opened before anyone answered her. 2 IRS criminal investigation agents entered first. Behind them came federal agents in dark jackets, moving with the calm efficiency of people who do not need to raise their voices because they arrived with warrants. Special Agent Elias Reed was among them. He did not look at me immediately. He looked at the room, then at Cole, then at Vivian. Professional, controlled, final. Cole's face collapsed. He tried to stand again, but his knees seemed to fail halfway, and he dropped back into the chair. One agent approached him. "Cole Whitaker, please stand." "No," Vivian whispered. Cole looked at Nora. Nora said nothing. There was nothing she could say that would stop what had already been earned. The agent turned Cole gently but firmly and brought his hands behind his back. The sound of handcuffs clicking is smaller than people imagine. It is not cinematic. It is not dramatic. It is quiet, metallic, and final enough to change an entire life. Cole did not fight. The arrogance drained out of him so completely that for a moment he looked young. Not innocent. Never innocent. Just young in the way guilty sons can look when they realize their mothers cannot save them from law. I watched the golden child become a defendant. Vivian came off the witness stand so fast the bailiff stepped forward. "Stop this. Stop this right now. He is grieving. He made mistakes, but this is a family matter." Judge Ward's voice cut through the room. "Mrs. Whitaker, sit down." Vivian ignored her. I am Elliot Whitaker's widow. Do you understand who I am? I have served on charity boards in this city for 20 years. I am respected. An agent approached her. Vivian Whitaker. She backed away. Please turn around. No, I have done nothing wrong. Maya did this. Maya poisoned him. Maya has always hated this family. The agent repeated the instruction. Vivian looked toward the gallery, toward Nora, toward the judge, toward anyone who might still care about her performance. Nobody moved. Then she looked at me. For the first time in my life, my mother looked at me not with disgust, not with contempt, but with need. It was ugly how quickly she reached for motherhood when power failed her. Maya, she said, tell them to stop. I did not move. Her voice cracked. Maya, I am your mother. That sentence once would have folded me. I had spent years surviving on the hope that somewhere beneath Vivian's cruelty lived a mother who might one day choose me. But that woman was imaginary. The real Vivian had taken my keys at my father's funeral, frozen my money, called me a thief under oath, tried to force me into signing away my rights, and filed a false police report because I refused to disappear quietly. She did not want a daughter. She wanted a shield. I stood slowly. Daniel did not stop me. No, I said. A mother protects her child. You tried to bury yours. I am done saving you. Vivian stared at me as if I had slapped her. Then the agent turned her around and cuffed her. This time, she fought with words. She screamed about her reputation, her husband, her son, her rights, her attorney, the club, the board, the lies everyone else had told. She never once said she was sorry. Not to me, not to my father, not even to Cole. Cole was let out first. Silent now, eyes fixed on the floor. Vivian followed, still shouting until the courtroom doors closed behind her and cut the sound in half. The quiet after that was almost violent. Judge Ward recessed the court. People began to move, whisper, gather papers, avoid eye contact. Nora Blake stood alone at the defense table for a moment, then placed one hand on the closed binder like she was saying goodbye to a case she wished she had never accepted. Daniel touched my shoulder lightly. Are you okay? He asked. I looked at the doors where my mother and brother had disappeared. I thought about my father's grave, Naomi's evidence bags, the Thanksgiving recording, the fake will, the years of being told I was nothing by people who needed me to stay small so their lies could look large. No, I said, not yet. Then I breathed in, and for the first time, the air did not feel borrowed. But I will be. That was the day my family ended. But it was not the day my life ended. That part came later. 6 months later, Cole stood in federal court wearing a suit that did not belong to him anymore. It was one of the old ones, tailored from a life he had already lost, hanging slightly loose at the shoulders because consequences had carved weight off him. He did not look at me when he entered. He looked at the floor, at his attorney, at the judge. Anywhere except the sister he had tried to bury under his own crimes. By then, he had pleaded guilty to wire fraud, forgery, corporate embezzlement, and identity-related financial fraud connected to Naomi's forged documents and the offshore transfer scheme. 10 years. That was the sentence. Not forever, not enough to restore what he destroyed, but enough for the room to understand that golden children are still defendants when the evidence is real. Vivian's sentencing happened 2 weeks later. She wore cream, not black, as if she could still dress herself into sympathy. She had been convicted of conspiracy, extortion, perjury, and filing false reports. Her attorney spoke about grief, confusion, dependence on her son, and the emotional devastation of losing Elliot. Vivian dabbed her eyes while he spoke, but the judge had already heard the Thanksgiving recording, read the deposition transcript, and reviewed the false police report. 7 years. When the sentence came down, Vivian made one sound, a wounded little gasp meant for an audience that no longer existed. Hawthorne Ridge Country Club revoked her membership before the week was over. Her charity board positions vanished. The women who once sat at her table stopped returning calls. In the end, the society she worshipped abandoned her with the same elegance she had spent years using against other people. I thought sentencing would feel like victory. It did not. It felt like the final page of a book I had never wanted to read. Watching Cole led away did not give me back the brother I wished he had been. Watching Vivian collapse did not give me the mother I deserved. Justice answered the crimes. It did not rewrite childhood. It did not make the Thanksgiving table warm. It did not put my father in his chair again, badly carving turkey while pretending not to hear Vivian complain. All it did was close the door they had been using to walk in and out of my life with knives. Probate court validated my father's true estate plan shortly after that. Elliot had prepared better than Vivian and Cole ever imagined. The forged will was discarded for what it was: a desperate fraud printed on cheap paper and arrogance. Whitaker Commercial Holdings passed under my control, and the protected $4 million was released back into the company after the government completed the necessary forfeiture and tracing procedures. Several board members resigned before they could be removed. Charles Renner tried to explain his silence as caution. I told him caution that only protects power is just cowardice in a tailored jacket. He left the building without shaking my hand. For a few weeks, everyone assumed I would run the company. Reporters called. Former associates sent careful emails. People who had ignored me at my father's funeral suddenly wanted meetings. I could have taken the corner office, I could have put my name on the door, sat behind Elliot's desk, and turned inheritance into proof that Vivian had been wrong. But I had spent too much of my life being measured by people who did not know what I was worth. I did not need a building to validate me. I needed my father's company protected by someone who understood both money and survival. So I went to Brooks Lux Realty with an executive contract in my bag. Naomi met me in her conference room, the same glass-walled room where I had first watched Cole unravel. She looked different now. Not softer exactly, but less armored. Her divorce was still moving through court, ugly in the way divorces become when one person mistakes exposure for betrayal. But Brooks Lux Realty had survived. More than survived. Clients had stayed because Naomi told the truth before the rumor machine could rewrite it. I placed the contract on the table. I want you to run Whitaker Commercial Holdings Commercial Real Estate Division. Naomi looked at the folder, then at me. Run it how? With authority, equity, board control over development strategy, full review power over legacy contracts, no decorative title, no permission slip. She opened the contract and read in silence. I liked that about her. Naomi never accepted respect without checking the terms. This is generous, she said. It is earned. You know, people will talk. People talked when my mother lied. They can talk while we rebuild. For the first time, Naomi smiled like she actually meant it. You know, we were never supposed to compare notes. That is why they lost. She signed that afternoon. Not because she needed saving, not because I needed family, because loyalty means more when it is chosen after the truth, not demanded before it. Naomi was not my sister by blood. She was something cleaner than that. She was the woman who looked at the fire my family started and decided not to run from it. A week later, I drove to my father's grave alone. The sky was clear, and the cemetery grass had that bright green color that always feels disrespectful around loss. I brought no flowers. Vivian had buried him under flowers. I brought a single ledger page from one of the first company books he had ever shown me, copied and framed small enough to rest against the stone. The original was safe in the company archive. This was just a symbol, but symbols matter when they belong to truth instead of performance. I stood there for a long time before I spoke. The company is safe, I said. The wind moved through the trees. Naomi is running the division. You would like her. Actually, you did like her. You just never got the chance to see how much spine she had. I laughed once, then cried before I could stop myself. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to admit that I was still angry. Angry that he died. Angry that he had trusted Cole too long. Angry that I had needed federal evidence to make people believe I was not the villain of my own life. But beneath the anger, there was something new. Space, quiet, the strange, unfamiliar feeling of not waiting for the next attack. I protected the truth, I whispered, like you asked. When I left the cemetery, I did not drive the gray agency sedan. I had bought a car of my own. Nothing outrageous, nothing Vivian would have recognized as a trophy. The victory was not leather seats or money or seeing my mother's name removed from charity programs. The victory was silence. No cruel texts, no family ambushes, no country club whispers waiting for me at breakfast, no brothers smiling while holding a forged document, just road, sunlight, and a phone that did not make my stomach drop when it rang. People say blood is thicker than water, but they never tell you how poisonous blood can become when loyalty is one-sided. I lost a mother and a brother in that courtroom, but the truth is, I had lost them years before. That day, I just stopped pretending. I do not regret exposing Vivian and Cole. I regret only that they made it necessary. So, if you have ever had to cut off family to protect your peace, believe me when I say this. You are not heartless. Sometimes walking away is the only way to survive. Have you ever had a toxic family member try to rewrite the truth about you? Tell me your story in the comments. And if you want more real confessional revenge stories like this, make sure to subscribe.